Vincent McMahon. I'm not talking Jay McMahon. I'm talking Vincent Kennedy McMahon. The one we know as the evil Vince McMahon. But how evil is he? Apparently very evil. Not just on screen. Well, we're talking about his scandals today, and there are a lot of them. Starting with the steroid trial in 1992, where in 93, Vince McMahon was indicted by a federal court because they had a star witness in Nails, a former WWF wrestler, it was WWF at the time, who said that Vince McMahon ordered him to use steroids. Well, Vince got off on this one because they proved that Nails hated McMahon because McMahon fired him because he got into a physical altercation with him. So the jury let Vince McMahon off. But this is not the end of the Vince McMahon story. Now we are getting into the sexual side of the McMahon story. So strap yourselves on. I mean in. No, I mean on. Strap yourselves on for a very bumpy ride. First sexual exploits of McMahon that we know about. Now, we don't know what he covered up when he was younger, but we know about a former WWF referee from the 80s known as Rita Marie. That was not her real name. Her real name was Rita Chatterton, but her referee name was Rita Marie, who worked for WWF in the 80s, said on Geraldo Rivera in 1992 that Vince McMahon tried to make her have oral sex with him in 1986. And when she refused, Vince raped her. This story was corroborated by another wrestler in 2002, and she sued Vince McMahon for $11.5 million in 2022, which Vince, while maintaining his innocence, settled out of court for a multi-million dollar settlement. Now, why, if you're innocent, would you settle out of court for multi-million dollars? Especially when you're a billionaire and can hire the best lawyers on earth. Well, not the best lawyers on earth because you're not Disney, but maybe the second best lawyers on earth. Now, there's also another sexual incident from 2006 from a spa lady, a spa worker who's a woman who claims that Vince McMahon shown her naked pictures of him, groped her, tried to kiss her, and generally was just trying to have sex with her when she didn't want him to do it. I'm not getting this, but those charges were eventually, but never filed with charges. They couldn't prove it then. But there was another spa lady in 2011 from California who claimed basically the same thing and ended up settling with Vince McMahon out of court. Then the WWF board under Vince McMahon, a WWE board under Vince McMahon, found $3 million in charges for payouts for non-disclosure agreements for sex in 2022. Well, they kept digging and eventually found $12 million in payouts for sex. At this point, Vince McMahon decided to resign, but was still head of creative, though he eventually retired. Now, the WWF board kept digging and eventually found $19.2 million in payouts for non-disclosure agreements for sex and for sex for Vince McMahon and WWE executive John Laurinaitis. I don't get why Vince McMahon isn't just paying hookers to have sex with him. I mean, if you got to pay the women anyways, just pay hookers. Because 19.2 million can buy you a lot of hookers. It could even buy you strippers to have sex with if you don't want to have sex with the hookers. Because most strippers, if you pay them enough, will have sex with you. Vince McMahon resigned. As I said, Vince McMahon decided to retire from WWE at this point. Though he was back 6 months later, at which point his daughter Stephanie left WWE. Triple H, though, stayed on, and Vince McMahon merged the company with UFC to create TKO, the company. At which point Vince McMahon no longer had the majority control, which was Vince McMahon's final mistake. In January 2024, a former WWE employee named Janelle Grant sued Vince McMahon and TKO, claiming that Vince McMahon, let me try to get all this in because I'm not sure I remember it all, had sex with her, trafficked her, cruel and unusually had sex with her, including someone defecating on her. And there was several other things that were like really bad. I don't remember them all. You'll have to go to Wikipedia if you want to see them all, but it's really bad. Along with John Laurinaitis and a WWE star who was a former UFC fighter between 2016 and 2020. Now, during that time, there wasn't a whole lot of WWE wrestlers who were former UFC fighters, so you could pretty much guess who this is. There was only like 2 of them during that time. I think maybe only 1. Along with John Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon named as co-defendants, along with this wrestler who was a former UFC fighter named as a co-defendant in this lawsuit, claiming that Vince owed her $2 million still on a $3 million non-disclosure agreement pact they had for her not going forward with these allegations. Why didn't Vince just pay her the money? I mean, I'm sure if I defecate on a woman, I would pay her money to shut her up. Then again, I guess Vince normally defecates on women and they don't care, so who knows? At which point, Vince McMahon once again resigned from his company. John Laurinaitis is retired, and who knows what's going to happen to the wrestler? I mean, his name hasn't come out yet, but when his name comes out, who knows what's going to happen to him? On February 1st, John Laurinaitis issued a statement saying that Vince McMahon pretty much bullies him into sexual situations that he does not want to do if John Laurinaitis messes up. John Laurinaitis is a former wrestler. Vince McMahon has wrestled. Pretty sure John Laurinaitis could kick Vince McMahon's ass. But no, Vince McMahon forces John Laurinaitis into sex. On February 2nd, 2024, the federal investigation issued a search warrant of all things pertaining to sex trafficking, sexual assault, sexual paying for sex, pretty much anything pertaining to sex that is not having sex with his wife, or sexual rape, everything that pertaining to sex that involves not just regular intercourse, that involves sex that is just not like sex, that is not consensual sex for Vince McMahon. And I think John Laurinaitis too. And it took it from Vince's home, Vince's work. So Vince doesn't have a job anymore. I'm sure there's still Vince files at work. And Vince's vacation home, I believe. For his phone, his computer, his everything. They just went through everything. So we will see if Vince decides to go to jail. Well, it's not really up to him. It's up to the feds to send Vince to jail. At which point, I am sure he will do 3 months, then get out and do it again. Because he is Vince McMahon and he believes he is immortal. Until a woman breaks his dick. At which point, we will all rejoice that Vince now has a broken dick. So, personally, I think this should be a wrestling angle. Vince comes back as evil Vince McMahon and just starts raping the divas. And then one diva stands up to him and he makes her life a living hell and she challenges him to a match, at which point she breaks his dick in the ring. Okay, see you next week.